So here's a fascinating question for our times. Can a virtual world actually give you the same peace of mind as a real one? Today, we're going to explore whether technology can step in for nature when it comes to our mental health. Now, where are we getting all this from? Well, this entire explanator is grounded in a really interesting 2020 paper by Browning and his colleagues, which was published in Frontiers in Psychology. They set out to answer this very question. And this gets to a core idea that I think a lot of us can really relate to. You know, when you're stuck inside, for whatever reason, could putting on a VR headset actually deliver some of the same mental health benefits as a real walk in the woods? Okay, so let's dive right in, because to really understand why this question even matters, we first have to look at a growing problem, what some people are calling the nature deficit. We're just increasingly disconnected from the natural world. I mean, just think about these numbers for a second. The vast majority of people are now living in cities. Millions are in hospitals or in assisted care or have physical disabilities that make getting outside tough. For all these people, getting easy, direct access to safe, green spaces, it's a huge challenge. And this is exactly the problem these researchers are trying to figure out a solution for. So, this leads to a pretty logical question, right? If people can't get to nature, can we somehow bring nature to them? And that's what led these researchers to design a really clever experiment. This was their specific goal. And they weren't talking about, weeks of therapy here. We're talking about a single short dose. Could a 360-degree video, one that was captured in a real forest, give you the same psychological boost as actually being in that forest? And the way they set it up was actually pretty brilliant and simple. They randomly put people into one of three groups. The first group literally just sat in a real forest. The second group sat indoors and watched a VR video of that exact same spot. And the third group, the control, well, they just sat inside staring at a blank wall. This setup let them perfectly isolate what effect each experience was having. And get this, the entire experience, for every single person in every group, lasted just 6 minutes. That's it. I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing to think that you could see any measurable change in mood in such a tiny window of time. So this is the big question, right? What happened? What did they find out about people's moods in these totally different scenarios? Let's break down the results. So you can basically think about it like this for each group. For the people outside, would their mood actually get better? For the VR group, would it do the same? Or maybe just keep their mood from getting worse? And for the poor folks staring at a wall, what happens then? And here it is, the results for positive mood. And this is fascinating. The outdoor group saw a real significant increase in their positive feelings. The control group, well, as you might guess, their mood took a pretty significant nosedive. But the VR group, now this is the interesting part, their mood was preserved. It didn't go up, sure, but it didn't drop either. VR acted like a protective buffer. So when you look at the whole picture, a few things really pop out. While only real nature actually boosted positive mood, it's interesting that all three groups saw a drop in negative feelings. But here's what I think is the real kicker: restorativeness. Both the real nature and the VR nature experiences were rated as highly restorative. People felt like they were having a refreshing experience, even inside the headset. I mean, you really can't say it better than the researchers did themselves. Real nature is an active mood booster. VR nature is a mood preserver. And just sitting inside with nothing to look at, well, that's a mood diminisher. Each one has its own distinct, measurable effect. Okay, so this is all great in a lab, but what does it mean for the real world? If VR can preserve our mood and feel restorative, where could we actually use this? Let's look at some of the practical applications. And there was this one finding that's a little surprising at first, but it really helps explain why this works. They measured skin conductivity and found that both real and VR nature actually increased what's called physiological arousal. Now that sounds like stress, but it wasn't. It was linked to positive feelings of engagement and fascination. Basically, the control group was bored, but the nature groups were captivated. And this just opens up so many possibilities, right? Imagine being able to provide these experiences in hospitals or in nursing homes or even in windowless offices. For people who have physical limitations or who live in cities without safe parks, a VR headset could become a really vital tool for well-being, almost like a prescription for a dose of nature. All right, so let's pull back for our final section and just look at the big picture here. We've seen the data, but what does this all tell us about our future? Our relationship with both nature and technology? Now, we've got to be fair and point out something important here. The people in this study were healthy college students, a group that's probably pretty comfortable with new tech. The researchers themselves are clear that we can't just assume we'd get the same results with, say, elderly populations. So more research is definitely needed. And that all leaves us with this final and, I think, pretty huge question to think about. It's clear that VR isn't a replacement for the real thing, but it's shaping up to be a pretty powerful tool. So as our digital wilderness gets more and more realistic, it really forces us to ask, what is it about the real wilderness that is so irreplaceable, and what must we fight to preserve?